Welcome to Real Estate for Real People, hosted by Shannon and Tamara Stone. As award-winning real estate professionals, the Stone sisters have spent years helping people navigate the complexities of buying, selling, and investing in real estate. From first-time homebuyers to seasoned investors, Real Estate for Real People is the go-to resource for anyone looking to make smart decisions in the world of real estate. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from some of the best in the business.
Hi, welcome back to Real Estate for Real People. Today's episode, we are really thrilled to have Christopher Alexander from Remax. So he's the president of Remax Canada. And this is going to be a great conversation. So if you are, sitting at your house, grab your coffee. If you're out for a run, tune us in. It's going to be amazing. So Christopher, without further ado, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself before we kind of jump right into it.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. You had asked me about my background, so maybe I'll start there and then we can get into deeper conversation. Does that sound good?
Perfect. That sounds perfect.
Awesome. So I've been involved in Remax my entire life. So my grandfather was one of the founders of Remax Ontario Atlantic, which was the first official Canadian region in the Remax system. And he converted his brokerage, which was called Polsler Real Estate, in 1980 to form the first group of franchises in Eastern Canada for the brand.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes. So he had 6 offices, and it was kind of the old story. 2 of them made money, 2 of them lost money, and 2 kind of broke even. And at the time, franchising was really blossoming in the industry. Century 21 in the 70s was really making a lot of hay. And the reality was he was broke. He knew he needed a brand name to compete in the marketplace, and he acquired the rights to the eastern seaboard of Canada as well as Ontario.
And was Remax in Canada at that point?
There was one franchise in Calgary, and that one was sold in 78. It's called Remax First. It's still there, different ownership group today. But Frank and his partner Walter were the first sub-master franchisors outside of the U.S.
Wow.
And the fascinating thing about their story was they sold almost 30 franchises in the first 9 months of acquiring the brand.
Wow.
And they really set the tone for the whole organization, not just in Eastern Canada, but the U.S. as well, on what was possible. And, Walter will always tell the story about they went to a convention in Las Vegas with about 25 other regional owners. It was a deep recession in the U.S., and they were going around the table. How many franchises did you sell? 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. They get to Frank and Walter, and it's like 25. So, it's well known in our organization that they really helped keep Remax afloat in those early years in the 80s because things were in such turmoil in the U.S. And, that they really united the independents in Canada and allowed people to be in business for themselves, not by themselves. It was an industry-changing concept. You hear that a lot today, but it really was the one system that turned things completely upside down, because before Remax, there was bank-owned brokerages. Commission splits for realtors were 50-50 or 60-40, 60% going to the broker owner. And the maximum commissions concept really changed things. And Frank and Walter paved the way for people like Bob Chereau, who owned Remax of Western Canada, to develop his region, and Pierre Titley in Quebec, who still owns Quebec today. And so, I mentioned Polsler Real Estate, and my mom ended up taking that company over. And my dad was working at the region, selling franchises, doing region development work, working with existing franchisees. So my mom took over that business. She grew it. And, fast forward to 1998, I got my first job as a janitor at that company, cleaning offices, mowing the lawns. Had to be up at 4:30 every day to get to the office for 5, and gentleman's name was John Ward, who was the head of maintenance for that office. I did that for a couple summers. Then I did front desk work, I worked in the accounting department. My first job there was the very important task of shredding old documents. I used to sit in a room.
That's an important job. That is a very, very important job.
I used to sit in a room with no windows and just shred for hours and hours. And, that the noise of a little small trash compactor shredder, I can still hear it in my mind today. But I explored multiple different roles in the brokerage business, did a lot of bill collecting as well for the accounting department. Then summers passed. I went on, did other jobs in the summer, but just kept my toe in the water on the brokerage side. And I never really thought I wanted to get into real estate until I got to university and thought to myself, well, if I really want to earn the kind of income I want to earn, I'm going to have to either take a lot more school, which I didn't want to do, or get my license. And so I got my license and started selling. Did okay in my first year, took a lot of coaching in my second year, which ramped things up, and just sort of getting more involved in the brokerage from the management side. My sister at that point was working at the region in franchise development. She decided it wasn't for her. She came back to the brokerage. She was a fantastic agent, and her and I started to work together a little bit. She obviously took the lead. She still owns the Remax Professionals today.
Wow.
But that was when I kind of started to get my stride. I was doing a lot of sales meetings, listing presentation workshops. And then in 2014, there was an opportunity to come to Remax Ontario as a franchise sales consultant. And I took it. And that's where I really found my passion for, I've always loved the brand. I mean, grandfather being the founder, passion runs deep. But the franchising side of the business was, I just loved it a lot more than selling real estate. And fast forward a couple of years in, my boss at the time took an opportunity to buy into a Remax franchise. And so there was a vacancy for a regional director, and it took me about 4 or 5 months to convince my mom, Frank, and Walter that I could do the job. And they gave me the opportunity, and it just kind of kept growing. And we had a lot of success as a region. I mean, we converted the largest Keller Williams in Canada in my first year on that job.
Wow.
And a lot of things just kind of came together. And my mom, who was CEO at the time, she was doing less and less, putting more and more on my plate. So I started to get involved in our U.S. regions and was managing some of that for the last couple of years. And then in 2021, we sold our business, our North American business, because our families still owned Schneiders and Polzlers, still own the rights to Remax Europe, but we sold our North American businesses to Remax Holdings, which created Remax Canada. And so those of you familiar with the brand, Remax of Western Canada has been owned by Remax Holdings since 1998 when Bob Charot sold it back to them. And so with Remax Integra folding into company-owned regions, it created Remax Canada, which is a powerhouse today. And one other thing, too, I think was worth mentioning, I am a broker owner as well, 50% partner with my sister in a company in north of Toronto in Muskoka and Haliburton County.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And we've got about 92 realtors as of today. We took over a disaster. Previous broker, franchisee, stole a bunch of money from his trust account. Oh. And so that was an experience right before COVID too. So that was January 2020 when that all happened. But that is the Coles notes of my story with the brand.
That's amazing. And so tell us a bit more about what you're doing now. So now that it's all one, Canada is all one, what does that look like?
Well, really, it's been, the first year was candidly a big feeling out process. And both regions, Western Canada, Ontario Atlantic, were very, very successful on their own. And we really set out, along with Elton Nash, the regional VP of Western Canada for years now, regional VP of Remax Canada, we really set out to pick the best of both worlds and apply them nationally. And so that was really the first, call it 8 to 12 months, was really a feeling out process, trying to pick the best systems, tools, services, processes from both regions and apply them on a national scale. But all along through the background, our goal was also to really modernize the brand and bring a more robust offering to our membership, be able to appeal to the next generation of realtors. Before we were acquired, that was really our mandate in the East, was to bring sexy back, so to speak.
Smart. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I mean, Remax has storied history. Lots of people will say, we were the original disruptor. I mentioned how we changed the industry in the early days, but over time you become the establishment. And that's true for any industry, any industry powerhouse. And, technology has changed our business in so many ways. And so for us to continue to lead, I mean, we've held number one market share in Canada since 1987 as a brand nationally. And it's a position we've held since then. I mean, we're coming up to 40 years as the number one company in the country. And you're constantly, when you're number one, people are always trying to get at you. And so you're constantly reinventing.
Got a target on your back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can appreciate that in your business. I mean, you guys are number one in your market. So, you know what it's like.
Yeah, you work so hard to get there.
Yes.
And, fight like mad to make your way up there. And then you fight like mad to stay there, and constantly trying to, stay smart and stay on your toes and be looking around and not get complacent. And we see that in our business. And I know, Remax sees that as well, certainly.
Yeah. And so.
Sorry. Yeah, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Shan.
I was just going to say, there's lots of talk about disruptors. You were just talking about that. I mean, Remax, started and was the disruptor in a sense, doing things the new way. And we know that there are people talking about disruptors, if we want to call them that, different avenues of doing the business, different models. How does Remax feel about that? Remax is number one. We are, huge believers in the brand. But what is your take on that and where the direction of Remax is going?
Well, there's a lot to unpack with that question, because
I
know,
she's good at asking those questions, just for the record.
Well, I appreciate it, because, my perspective on all of it is there's two facets. There's disruption to our industry as a whole. And, Steve Murray, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's industry guru on Real Trends, which is the premier data analytics company in the business. He recently sold this company, but he said something to me that I thought was very profound, is that people have been trying to revolutionize our business since its inception. And really, organized real estate in North America was like 1890 is when it kind of started to get going. And the two biggest things to happen to our business in the last 50 years were Remax and Keller Williams, more so in the US for Keller Williams. And so, Sears tried to get into our business. The banks for a long time owned it. They went out, they're trying to get back in. And then about 7-8 years ago, venture capital has really set their eyes on the real estate industry. And that's because it generates close to $100 billion in commissions, not volume, commissions. And so Wall Street wants a piece of that pie, and people have been trying for so long and with minimal success. And I think for the average consumer, they look at our business, they don't understand it. It's not a consistent transactional business for the average consumer. People aren't buying and selling homes like they take taxis or order, online. It's the threshold has actually gone up. It used to be 5 to 7 years. Now it's more like 7 to 10. It's when people move. That cycle is that long. And so, as you guys know, so much changes in such little time in our business. Policies come out, new rules, new regulations, all those things. So staying on top of it is difficult unless you're a full-time active realtor. So there's that piece of it. There's also the disruption within our industry from different business models. And some of them have been much more successful than others. And, from my perspective, I think it's just the reality of our business. New and industry, period. Like,
exactly.
Different entrepreneurs are trying to make things cheaper, faster, more efficient across the board. We're not unique in this at all. But what I do really believe is that there's a model for everybody. And fortunately for Remax, we are still the only organization that is obsessed with success and full-time professionalism.
Yes.
Period.
I would
agree.
That's our DNA. We believe it's what the company was founded on. It's what we believe consumers deserve, especially with their most valuable asset, that they need a professional to help guide them through the process. And so everything we do at this organization is geared towards helping facilitate the best experience possible with our membership to their customers. And I firmly believe consumers are going to continue to be attracted to that and want to work with the best possible people. And you've seen that as recently as, through COVID. Consumers came to us in a big way. In times of crisis, consumers go to what they know and what they trust. We're the most trusted brand in Canada, most trusted brand in the U.S. We have a reputation for getting the job done with minimal, hiccups. And, the market really turned, or in the beginning of about 12 months ago. Our market share has been growing because nominal salespeople have had a hard time keeping up. And, the different business models have come in. They've taken some of our agents. We've taken some of theirs. Some have gone from us to them, come back. So that's just part for the course in our industry.
Yeah.
But we're just still so focused and obsessed with helping our agents be as productive as they possibly can be, making their lives easier. And in turn, that makes the consumer experience better.
You used a word that I've written down and circled, actually, Christopher, and I really like it. And you said membership. And I like that. I like, I think as humans, I think we all want to be part of something. And, I don't know that any of the competitors have that sense of familiarity or a belonging to something. Community. And, we went to the Remax celebration event in Vancouver earlier this week. And I like that word membership because that is something to me that embodies what Remax is. I mean, we use family, but everybody uses the word family. And membership is, I think there's something there that it isn't, it's not just dollars and cents. It's not just transactions. It's actually being part of something. And I think that's important. And I think that will help carry the brand going forward to belong and members. I love that.
Well, people ask me often what my favorite thing is about the brand. And there's lots, but it is the membership, the events, the camaraderie. We hired somebody from a different brand, high profile brand. Recently, he heads up our franchise sales department now. His name's Mark Lindsay. And he was at R4 and for the first time back in February. And I said, Mark, tell me, how does this compare to where you were before? And I won't mention any names, but this is a big company, huge presence in the U.S. And, they throw big events. He said, Chris, it's night and day. Everything here is positive. The people you meet and talk to all have a similar mindset, and everything's about success and agent success and helping agents do more business, win more listings. And he's just felt it so refreshing because in his eyes, the other events were good too, but there's really no network like ours. And in an industry where 10% of the agents are doing 90% of the business, it used to be 80-20, but I think it's pretty hard to argue that it's not closer to 90-10 now. It's really inspiring. And that was profound to me to hear him say that because, as I mentioned, the company he was with is a very formidable organization.
I love that. It's true. So let's jump over to the market and your thoughts as to the real estate market overall. I mean, you see sales and you see the stats and the numbers on a national level. And so, what are your thoughts on what the Canadian real estate market is in right now and where they're going?
Well, the last 12 months, I think, was desperately needed. We were on a runaway train. And what was so fascinating about it was the pandemic created an equalizer in North America and Europe for housing, and South America too. But it was the same story in Canada as it was in the rest of the world that I just mentioned. It was very limited inventory. Everybody wanted to buy. Home became unbelievably important. But it was on a runaway train, and unsustainable growth that's been tossed around a lot over the last year. But it's true. I mean, you can't expect 25% year over year, 10% month over month returns forever and ever.
No.
So, what I'm very pleased to have seen though is that wave of listings that many people predicted didn't come. Which, I mean, you don't want people to lose their homes, obviously. But at the same time, I was it would have been a welcomed reprieve for many markets across Canada because there's just such little product available from coast to coast. I mean, there was parts of New Brunswick in January that had more inventory in January and February than they did in 2022 in those months. But generally speaking, from Vancouver Island to Newfoundland, it was low inventory and low demand too, because we were on this volatile cycle of forever and ever interest rate increases.
It's true. Yeah.
But now, we've had 2 cycles of Bank of Canada standing pat. Life happens. Situational demand has outweighed the amount of product that's available in itself. And what I mean by situational demand is people getting married, having babies, getting divorced. The life happens transactions that, because we're in a necessity business, housing, shelter, people are going to move no matter what the market conditions are like because they have to. And that situational demand has actually outpaced the amount of supply. And where I'm concerned is, we're welcoming 500,000 new Canadians a year, which I think is great. It's going to be good for our economy. However, there's no national housing strategy to support that level of growth in population. And, we released a report in August of last year on inventory levels. And I remember speaking to her name's Lydia McNutt. She heads up public relations for us, who builds all these great reports. She said, I was like, what are the key messages out of the report? She said, Chris, it's not like the boat is at the dock and it's ready to go. The boat's already leaving with this challenge. And so, we've been very vocal about having all 3 levels of government work together to formulate an actual strategy. Ontario has formulated a plan. That's the only province I've really seen that's taken steps that are beyond just talk. But even in Ontario, there's a lot of hurdles, a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy. It takes builders forever and ever to get permits, and property values have gone through the roof, that it's becoming more and more difficult to be profitable.
Absolutely.
Building anything beyond 1 bedrooms and studios. And so, I'll take the GTA as an example. To the south, you've got Lake Ontario, and to the north, you've got this green belt that you can't touch. And so you're kind of trapped and you're kind of screwed because there's nowhere to go but up, and which a lot of developers have been doing, but it's only profitable to build 700 square foot average apartments. So how are you going to raise a family in that?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So,
well, earlier on a podcast, Jen, I recorded, we were talking about the most expensive property that just sold in New York. It's the most expensive ever that has sold in the United States. And it went for $239 million.
wow.
239 million US for a condo in
now
New
a
York
big
City,
condo
overlooking
so
Central
you
Park.
could raise a family in that.
Yeah, 239 million, and you look back in Canada and just think, okay, and they're selling for that kind of money. I mean, we're seeing Toronto, certainly they're building up. We're seeing that in Kelowna, where we are, that we don't have a lot of land available. We've got some, but they're not releasing that. That's protected and reserved for farmland or in the agricultural land reserve. And then we have the lake and mountains. So we're also going up, I think, between my house and the gym. There are 10 cranes up, which we've never sort of seen this kind of growth here, but we need to, because we still don't have enough housing for the people that are coming. And it's that continues
and it's
to
not
drive
the right
prices.
housing, as you're saying, Christopher. It's yes, they're going up, and that's great. But for them to be profitable, they need to be 700 square feet sort of thing for the developers. And that's not really going to house families and some of this. So I'd love to hear that Remax is so vocal in sharing your knowledge, with the governments to kind of say, hey, this is what we're seeing and this is what we need. I think that's it. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, we're deep in on trying to influence change. And, for any of the listeners, if you want to read any of these reports we do, they're on blog.remax.ca, but there's a lot of great insight into just how deep that specific challenge is in this country. You mentioned Kelowna. I'm so glad they're building out that airport.
Yes,
because
we need that.
It's poised for a great population boom, and I'm hoping that there's more regular flights to get in and out there, because that'll bode well for Kelowna especially. But okay, so a lot of doom and gloom in that. However, you mentioned New York, 225 million. We have nowhere even near that value of property in Canada.
No.
People are going to look to us as Canada being on sale. I mean, the most expensive property that I'm aware of being sold in Canada was around 65 million.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and that was even like several years back. But 65 million Canadian is 58 or 48 million US probably with the exchange rate. And so, we've got solid education, generally speaking, good healthcare, solid banking industry.
Yes.
So people are going to be, abundance of natural resources. So as long as we have a good manager at the top, Canada's going to continue to attract people around the world. But I just think, if you're a realtor listening to this, we have to really work smarter now to adapt to change. Consumers have more insight into what we're doing. I'm really hopeful that we get to the place where they can see who's doing what from a transaction standpoint. So an agent comes in, and the consumer can say, well, I see you've only sold 2 homes in the last year, and the Stone Sisters sold 2 homes this afternoon. I'm going to want to work with the person that I know is doing business. And I think that's another thing in our industry that's so prevalent now is social media fame, and you're able to project a level of success that's not real.
Yes.
Yes. That's a great point.
Fake it till you make it. Great. But I just think people are really starting to see through that, especially realtors now. Like I'm hearing a lot of people talk more about I don't care how many Instagram followers you have, how many homes have you sold. Because I think that's really important. Productivity is really important, and people dive into this business because they look at agents like yourselves who have been so successful for so long, but they don't understand, the late nights, the weekends, the hard work, the stress, the emotional roller coaster that you go on. And I think a lot of people get in it for the wrong reasons. I mean, our realtor population in Canada is still growing, but the National Association of Realtors membership has already decreased by 60,000 agents in the last 12 months.
In Canada, Christopher, what's the average age of a realtor? Do you know that, or the average age of a Remax realtor?
So the average age of a realtor in Canada is about 55. That's come down. It used to be 58 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Remax is about 48.
Interesting.
Wow, interesting.
That's great.
And so
that's good.
There's been a shift there as well from the standpoint is most people get into real estate as a second or third career. Mm-hmm. More and more people are getting in as a first career, that's interesting as well.
Yeah, good point, actually. We certainly see that here.
And they're getting in, I like to see people getting in, treating this as a profession, as a career, not just as a hobby. Mm-hmm. And again, that's sort of going back to the social media of, I spend most of my time golfing. I don't work evenings and weekends, and I drive a Mercedes. And I'm just like, how is that beneficial to the public? As you say, it's somebody's biggest interest or biggest asset. And, I like the professionalism. I know that's part of why we're at Remax and why we stay at Remax is we treat this as a profession and are, quite rigid actually in our systems and protocols. And it's great to have a company behind us that has the exact same standards.
And full-time. Everybody's full-time.
It's a great, yeah.
Well, consumers deserve it.
Yeah.
I mentioned it before. It's the biggest, 99% of people's most valuable asset. Mm-hmm. They deserve somebody that really knows what they're doing to handle a transaction of that magnitude. And so, as far as I'm concerned, professionalism is just so important, and that's really our DNA is making sure we're top class in everything that we do and supporting our members to be that themselves.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
So, what's your forecast, I guess, for the Canadian market, would you say?
Well, I mentioned the parallel during the pandemic. It's still consistent because, over the last 3, almost 4 weeks now, I've been hearing from a lot of realtors across the country that it's really picked up. Mm-hmm. Affordability is still going to be a challenge. Mortgage rates are much higher than they were during the pandemic, but they're still, in the grand scheme of things, 5%. You lock in at 4.75 with some banks now. That's a great rate going forward. The froth totally taken away. I don't expect a frenzy yet, but if there are rate decreases towards the end of this year, like many are predicting, it will become a very competitive marketplace towards the fall because we just don't have the product. And it's a bit of a shame.
No. Well, even this morning on Facebook, somebody in a Toronto real estate group posted that there were 36 offers on a property.
Wow.
And it's, we're not seeing that here in Kelowna. I know they're getting a bit of that in Vancouver, but we're getting some multiple offers. You might have 2 or 3, and they typically aren't going over asking price or a very small amount. But hearing that or seeing that in the spring market, that 36 offers, I just thought, wow, here we go again.
Well,
because that's no fun really for anyone. It's not fun for the sellers because they wonder, did they price too low? Could they have gotten more? It's not fun for the 35.
Where are they going to go? Because they have to move out quickly.
Yeah. And the 35 unsuccessful bidders, are just disappointed and sort of builds up on that frenzy of, how do I get in quick?
Yeah, we have to be very careful with ending up back to where we were, early 22 and all of 2021.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So one more question, and then sorry, because you are so busy, I know, and we so appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk with us. And this has been fascinating. It's, and I hope I hope realtors all across Canada listen to this because it's great to sort of have this one-on-one conversation with you, get a feel sort of a bit more for the brand. I think that's important. What advice would you have? Somebody looking at buying their home or getting into the market. Would you say, yes, get into the market? Would you say, hold? I think I know this answer. But
well, we have to look at a couple of factors. One, real estate's not a get rich quick scheme.
Like that.
And it's all about time in the market instead of timing it. That's an old cliche in our industry, but it's really true. So what I always say is, if the property's right, it's within your means, it meets your expectation, you're not overextending yourself, go for it. Because you're building your asset value. And it might not be the dream home that you were hoping for out of the gate, but that rarely ever happens. People don't buy their dream homes for their first house. And so patience is a virtue, but don't get caught up in the noise. Real estate is one of the most sound investments you can make. And just don't overextend yourself. Make sure it ticks all the boxes for you, or as many as it can. And get in when it's right for you and it meets that criteria.
That's great advice. I would agree.
Great advice.
100%.
I love that.
And use the Stone Sisters as your realtors. That was the advice too.
Exactly.
Yeah, you forgot that part.
Okay, I have one last question. I know I said that there's only one more, but one last question, something not real estate related at all, but tell us something that we or listeners may not know about you.
I
know I've put you on the spot, so you're going to have to think of something real quick. It doesn't have to be anything.
Well, I guess at the heart, I'm a big family man. I've got a wife and two young children. One just turned 6 last weekend, and they're everything to me. And I'm a big family guy.
I love that. And that's part of why you're doing this too. Clearly you're a family man. You're carrying on your family's legacy and hopefully your kids will want to be involved in that. And then I think your members, your Remax family is part of that family man sort of persona. And we're all part of that, which is, I think that's really apparent.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This was a real pleasure.
Well,
thanks for having me. I really, really enjoyed this.
Yeah. That was great. So,
thank you. We really appreciate it.
For all our listeners, that's Christopher Alexander. He's what's your actual title? Do I say president?
Yes.
CEO?
President of Remax Canada.
Head honcho of Remax Canada and the big boss. If you want his cell, just text me. I'm kidding. But
people can find you if they want to. They can find you online, I'm sure, Googling your name or going onto the Remax website.
Alexander at remax.ca. Happy to talk to anybody that reaches out.
Wow. Thank you so much for
amazing.
joining us today. And
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Estate for Real People. If you want to reach out to the Stone Sisters, visit www.stonesisters.com. This podcast was produced by Podigy Podcasts. See you next time.